Imagine two of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. On one side, Greece, the land of philosophers, warriors, and poets. A culture that gave the world democracy, epic poetry, and the legends of Alexander the Great. On the other side, Rome, a rising superpower, relentless in war, disciplined in politics, and hungry for expansion. Both admired each other, yet destiny would drive them into a collision that changed the course of history forever. This is not just the story of armies marching and empires falling. It is the story of how the spear of Rome pierced the heart of Greece, and yet how Greece, in turn, conquered Rome in spirit. For while Roman legions triumphed in battle, Greek philosophy, art, and culture would seep into the very veins of the empire. This clash was more than war. It was a battle for identity, influence, and the future of civilization. Tonight, we will walk through the rise of Rome, the fractured Greek world, the wars that brought them head to head, and the surprising ways Greece shaped her conqueror. Buckle in. This is the epic saga of how Rome conquered Greece. Greece after Alexander, a fractured world. When Alexander the Great died in 323 BCE, he left behind the largest empire the world had ever seen. Yet like a shattered vase, it did not hold together. His generals, the Diadochi, carved it into pieces, founding kingdoms in Egypt, Asia, and Macedonia. Instead of unity, Greece descended into an age of rivalry, with city-states and monarchs scheming against one another. The great city-states Athens, Sparta, Thebes, no longer held the power they once did. Athens remained a beacon of culture, philosophy, and learning, but militarily it was weak. Sparta, once feared for its warriors, had become a shadow of its former self. Macedon still wielded influence, but constant struggles for succession weakened it. Greece had brilliance in thought, but cracks in power. Meanwhile, new leagues formed. The Aetolian League and the Achaean League tried to band cities together for protection and strength. Yet even these alliances were plagued with infighting, jealousy, old grudges, and political rivalries often mattered more than unity. When one city grew strong, others plotted against it. This fractured world of Greece was dazzling in culture but vulnerable in politics. It was the perfect stage for a rising power to exploit, and far to the west, across the Adriatic Sea, that power was stirring. Rome was watching. Rome before Greece, a relentless republic. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had already built a reputation for toughness. The Romans were not philosophers, nor were they artists. They were soldiers, engineers, and politicians who believed in discipline above all. Their republic was a machine of war. Citizens were soldiers, and soldiers were citizens. Every defeat only made them fight harder. Rome had conquered its Italian neighbors through a mixture of warfare and clever diplomacy. They did not simply crush cities, they absorbed them. Some allies were given partial citizenship, others were bound by treaties. This web of alliances gave Rome a vast pool of manpower that no rival could easily match. But Rome had also faced great challenges. The wars against Carthage, the Punic Wars, nearly destroyed them. Hannibal of Carthage marched elephants across the Alps and brought Rome to its knees. Yet Rome endured. They rebuilt their armies after every disaster and eventually crushed Carthage. By the time Greece was descending into chaos, Rome had emerged as the dominant power in the western Mediterranean. And now, with the west secure, Rome's eyes turned east, toward the wealth, prestige, and fractured politics of Greece. The first contact. Pyrrhus of Rome's first brush with Greek warfare came not in Greece itself, but in southern Italy. Many Greek colonies dotted the coast, places like Tarentum, which feared Roman expansion. In desperation, Tarentum called for help from a Greek king, Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus was no ordinary ruler. He was a cousin of Alexander the Great and dreamed of carving his own empire. He brought with him a modern Greek army, complete with phalanxes, and most famously, war elephants. When he clashed with Rome in 280 BCE, the battles were brutal. At Heraclea and Asculum Pyrrhus won, but his victories came at staggering cost. So heavy were his losses that we still use the phrase Pyrrhic victory today. Rome, unlike other states, did not collapse after defeat. They simply raised new armies. Pyrrhus, drained and frustrated, eventually withdrew. Rome had not yet conquered Greece, but the lesson was clear. They could face Greek armies in battle and survive. This was the beginning. Rome had dipped its toes into the Greek world, and soon it would plunge in entirely. Macedon and the First Macedonian War. The true confrontation began with Macedon, the kingdom that had once ruled under Alexander. By the late 3rd century BCE, Macedon was ruled by King Philip V, an ambitious monarch eager to restore his nation's glory. He allied himself with Carthage during the Second Punic War, hoping to check Roman power. This drew Rome directly into Greek affairs. The First Macedonian War 214 to 205 BCE was less decisive than later ones. But it marked a turning point. Rome was now a player in Greek politics. Rome allied with Greek leagues and states opposed to Macedon, and together they fought to contain Philip's ambitions. The war ended in stalemate, but Rome had gained something greater than territory, a foothold. They had learned the politics of Greece, forged allies, and set the stage for deeper involvement. For the Greeks, Rome was no longer a distant republic across the sea. It was now a force in their own affairs, and it would not leave. The Second Macedonian War. Rome's true arrival in Greece came during the Second Macedonian War 200 to 197 BCE. King Philip V of Macedon had grown more aggressive, threatening not just rival Greek states, but also Rome's allies in the eastern Mediterranean. Alarmed, Rome declared war, not just to defend allies, but to demonstrate its growing authority in the region. The Greek states were divided. Some saw Rome as liberators who could check Macedonian power, while others feared this foreign republic meddling in Greek affairs. The Aetolian League sided with Rome, eager to weaken Macedon, while others wavered, waiting to see who would prevail. Once again, Greece's disunity proved to be its greatest weakness. The decisive clash came at the Battle of Cynocephalae in 197 BCE. Here, Roman legions met the Macedonian phalanx head-on. For centuries, the phalanx had been the terror of the battlefield, a wall of spears that crushed opponents with sheer weight and unity. Yet at Cynocephalae, the Roman manipular system proved its superiority. Flexible and disciplined, the legions exploited gaps in the phalanx, breaking it apart and overwhelming the Macedonians. The results shocked the Greek world. For the first time, Rome had decisively defeated the famed Macedonian phalanx in open battle. Philip V was forced to surrender and accept humiliating terms. Rome, however, did something unusual. It did not seize Macedon outright. Instead, it proclaimed itself the protector of Greek freedom. This clever strategy allowed Rome to appear as a friend, while in reality tightening its grip. Rome the liberator. After Cynocephalae, Rome positioned itself not as a conqueror, but as a liberator of Greece. At the Isthmian Games in 196 BCE, the Roman general Titus Quinctius Flamininus declared that Greece was free from Macedonian domination, free to govern itself. The announcement was met with wild celebration. The crowds hailed Flamininus as a hero, showering him with praise. But this freedom was deceptive. Rome had not marched across the Adriatic for charity. By portraying itself as Greece's protector, Rome gained influence without the costs of occupation. Greek states, now indebted to Rome, often turned to the Republic to settle disputes, giving Rome an excuse to intervene further. Many Greeks were genuinely hopeful. They saw Rome as different from the despots of Macedon or the power struggles of the leagues. Yet beneath the surface, the balance of power had shifted. Rome had demonstrated its military might and its political cunning, and the Greek states had shown their vulnerability. For Rome, this was only the beginning. Even as the cheers of freedom echoed across Greece, the Republic was already preparing for the next confrontation, this time with a king who would not bow so easily. The rise of Antiochus III. While Macedon licked its wounds, another great power cast its eyes on Greece. The Seleucid Empire, ruled by Antiochus III, known as the Great Antiochus, dreamed of restoring Alexander's empire, uniting East and West under his rule. To many Greeks, he seemed a savior who could counterbalance Rome's growing influence. In 192 BCE, Antiochus entered Greece. Supported by factions of the Aetolian League, who had grown suspicious of Rome, he declared himself the champion of Greek freedom, just as Rome had done years earlier. For a moment, it seemed Greece might once again become the prize in a struggle between titans. But Rome was not about to let Antiochus gain a foothold. The Roman Senate quickly declared war, beginning the Roman Seleucid War 192 to 188 BCE. At first Antiochus enjoyed some success, but when Roman legions crossed into Asia Minor, the tide turned. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Magnesia in 190 BCE. Roman legions, supported by their allies from Pergamon, crushed Antiochus's massive army, which included war elephants and phalanxes. The defeat forced Antiochus to abandon his ambitions in Greece and Asia Minor, retreating to his eastern territories. For Greece, this meant one thing. Rome's dominance was no longer in question. Whether they liked it or not, the Republic was now the arbiter of Greek affairs. Greek politics in the shadow of Rome. In the years after Antiochus's defeat, Greece found itself in an uneasy position. Officially, the Greek states were free. In reality, every major decision required Roman approval. Ambassadors from Athens, Sparta, or Corinth increasingly made the journey to Rome, seeking Senate rulings on disputes that once would have been settled internally. The Achaean League, one of the most powerful federations, tried to maintain independence, but its actions were constantly checked. If it grew too bold, Rome would issue warnings. If it defied Rome outright, Roman soldiers appeared. The balance of power that once defined Greek politics had shifted. It was now Rome's favor or disfavor that determined outcomes. Some Greeks welcomed this arrangement. Athens, for instance, often aligned itself closely with Rome, enjoying protection and occasional financial support. Others, however, resented the interference. To them, the so-called freedom announced at the Isthmian Games had become a hollow promise. Tensions simmered, and it was only a matter of time before open conflict erupted once more. And when it did, Rome would not hold back. The Third Macedonian War. By the mid-2nd century BCE, Macedon had regained some strength under King Perseus. The son of Philip V, Perseus was ambitious, intelligent, and popular among his people. He sought to restore Macedone's prestige, forging alliances across Greece, and even with foreign powers like the Seleucids. Rome, always wary of rivals, saw his growing influence as a threat. The result was the Third Macedonian War, 171 to 168 BCE. This was not just another regional conflict, it was a showdown between a resurgent Macedon and the full might of Rome. Perseus fought bravely, winning some initial victories, but the Roman war machine was relentless. The decisive battle came at Pydna in 168 BCE. There, the Macedonian phalanx once again clashed with Roman legions. At first, the phalanx pushed forward, its wall of spears driving back the Romans. But as the ground grew uneven, gaps opened in the formation. The flexible Roman maniples exploited these weaknesses. Breaking into the phalanx and cutting down the soldiers at close range, the defeat was catastrophic. Perseus was captured, and Macedon was shattered. The once proud kingdom of Alexander the Great was reduced to a Roman client, stripped of its independence. For Greece, the message was clear. Resistance to Rome would end in destruction. The sack of Epirus. After Rome's victory at Pydna, Macedon was not the only target of punishment. The Roman Senate, determined to send a message to all of Greece, ordered a brutal campaign against Epirus. Roman soldiers swept through the region, burning towns, enslaving thousands, and carrying away enormous wealth. Ancient writers claim that as many as 150,000 people were sold into slavery. This devastation shocked the Greek world. Many had believed that Rome, despite its harshness, would show restraint. Instead, Epirus stood as an example of what happened when Greek states defied Roman authority. Entire families were uprooted, and centuries of culture were wiped away in days. The sack of Epirus was more than a military act, it was psychological warfare. Rome wanted every city in league to understand that rebellion would bring annihilation. Even loyal states trembled, realizing that friendship with Rome offered no guarantee of safety. From this point forward, the fear of Rome was almost as powerful as its armies. Greece had entered a new age, one in which defiance was nearly unthinkable. The humbling of Sparta, while Macedon and Epirus bore the brunt of Roman wrath, Sparta too found itself caught in the web of Roman politics. Once the terror of Greece, Sparta had long declined, but it still clung to its proud traditions and independent spirit. This independence often brought it into conflict with the Achaean League, and by extension Rome. When disputes broke out between Sparta and the League, the Spartans tried to play their old game of resisting outside control, but Rome had no patience for such defiance. Roman envoys imposed harsh settlements, stripping Sparta of territory and reducing its political autonomy. The irony was painful. A city that once defined military strength was now reduced to a pawn in Rome's diplomatic games. The image of Spartan warriors holding the pass at Thermopylae had been replaced by the reality of Spartan envoys pleading in Roman halls. For the Greeks, this was a symbolic loss. If even Sparta, the legendary land of Leonidas, could be humbled, then truly no city was safe from Rome's grip. The destruction of Corinth. The final blow to Greek independence came in 146 BCE. During the Achaean War, the Achaean League, frustrated by Roman interference and determined to preserve its freedom, rose in open rebellion. It was a courageous act, but also a hopeless one. Rome responded with overwhelming force. The decisive moment came at Corinth, one of Greece's most prosperous and influential cities. In 146 BCE, Roman legions stormed the city, massacred its defenders, and set it ablaze. The destruction was total. The men were killed, the women and children sold into slavery, and the city itself reduced to rubble. Corinth's fall sent shockwaves across the Greek world. The Romans had chosen their target carefully. Corinth was not only wealthy, but also a symbol of Greek pride. By destroying it, Rome demonstrated that resistance was futile. In the same year, Rome also crushed Carthage in the west. With both Greece and Carthage subdued, Rome emerged as the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. Greece becomes a Roman province. After the destruction of Corinth, Rome reorganized Greece into a province, formerly called Achaia. While some cities retained limited autonomy, ultimate authority now rested with Roman governors and the Senate. Taxes flowed to Rome, soldiers were recruited for Roman armies, and Greek politics became little more than local administration. Yet the conquest was not purely destructive. Rome admired Greek culture deeply. Roman elites studied Greek philosophy, employed Greek tutors, and filled their villas with Greek art. To conquer Greece was, in a sense, to embrace it. Cicero, centuries later, would boast that Rome had taken Greek culture and given it new life under Roman power. For ordinary Greeks, however, the reality was harder. Many communities struggled under taxation, and local freedoms were curtailed. Still, life continued. Theaters performed plays, philosophers taught students, and temples rose to the gods. Greece remained Greece, but now under the shadow of Rome. The political independence was gone, but the cultural brilliance endured. And in an ironic twist, the conquerors were becoming the conquered, in spirit, if not in arms. Greece conquers Rome in spirit, Though Rome had crushed Greece militarily, the cultural balance tilted the other way. Greek tutors shaped Roman children, Greek philosophers inspired Roman statesmen, Greek art filled Roman temples, and Greek gods were blended into Roman religion. To be educated in Rome was to know Homer, Plato, and Aristotle. Even Roman generals who had burned Greek cities returned home with Greek treasures. Statues, manuscripts, and artifacts filled Roman streets, creating a strange paradox. The victors had become students of the vanquished. Horace, the Roman poet, captured it best when he wrote, "Greece conquered, captured her savage conqueror." This cultural transfer reshaped Rome itself. Without Greece, Rome might have remained a military power. With Greece, it became the heart of Western civilization. The conquest of Greece was not simply the end of Greek freedom, it was the beginning of a new Greco-Roman world. For Greece, survival came not through armies, but through ideas. Though their walls had fallen, their words endured, echoing through the halls of Rome, and eventually, across the centuries to us. The legacy of conquest. The story of Rome's conquest of Greece is one of iron and paradox. Rome triumphed in battle, yet fell under the spell of Greek culture. Greece lost its freedom, yet preserved its soul through philosophy, art, and learning. What seemed like the end was, in truth, a transformation. The legions had shown their strength, breaking phalanxes and toppling cities, but the spirit of Greece proved indestructible. Plato's dialogues, Aristotle's logic, Sophocles' tragedies, and the myths of Homer lived on, shaping not just Rome but the world that came after. For the Romans, victory brought prestige, wealth, and cultural refinement. For the Greeks, defeat meant hardship, but also immortality. Their civilization, absorbed into Rome, became the foundation of Western history. And so the story closes on a profound irony. In conquering Greece, Rome built the bridge by which Greek civilization conquered the world. The clash of military systems, the wars between Rome and Greece were not only political but also battles between two very different military traditions. The Greek phalanx perfected in Macedon by Philip II and Alexander the Great was built on unity and discipline. Rows of heavily armed soldiers, locked shield to shield, could crush enemies with sheer weight. For centuries, this formation had seemed unstoppable. Rome, however, brought something new, the manipular legion. Instead of one rigid block, the legion was divided into smaller, flexible units. Soldiers could advance, retreat, or shift position depending on the terrain. This adaptability proved decisive in battles like Cynocephalae and Pydna, where Roman troops outmaneuvered the phalanx on uneven ground. The Roman soldier was also trained for individual initiative. While the phalanx demanded that each man hold his place in the line, the legion allowed room for independent action. This gave Rome an edge when battles broke down into chaotic clashes, where flexibility and resilience mattered more than sheer formation. The clash of systems revealed a deeper truth. Greek warfare had reached its peak under Alexander, but it had grown rigid and outdated. Rome, by contrast, was still evolving, refining tactics and absorbing lessons from every enemy it faced. The result was clear. The legion had eclipsed the phalanx as the dominant force of the Mediterranean. This military superiority did more than win battles. It gave Rome the confidence to challenge any foe, while Greek states increasingly realized their armies, once the terror of the ancient world, were now relics of a past age. Diplomacy, deception, and divide and conquer. Rome did not rely on swords alone to conquer Greece. Diplomacy, sometimes cunning, sometimes ruthless, was an equally important weapon. Roman envoys learned quickly that Greece's greatest weakness was its disunity. The city-states, bound by pride and rivalry, were never able to present a united front. Time and again, Rome played these divisions to its advantage. When the Aetolian League resisted, Rome courted the Achaean League. When Sparta grew troublesome, Rome reminded other cities of old Spartan arrogance. Macedon, Epirus, and smaller states alike found themselves isolated, one by one, until Rome could pick them off with ease. The Senate also excelled in deception. At times, Rome presented itself as the liberator of Greece, promising to protect freedom against tyrants. After defeating Philip V of Macedon, the Roman general Flamininus famously declared at the Isthmian Games that Greece was now free. The crowd erupted in joy, not realizing that Roman freedom came with invisible chains. Behind the rhetoric, Rome's true intentions unfolded gradually. Each alliance brought obligations. Each favor demanded repayment. Rome's friends soon found that their independence was little more than a formality. This divide-and-conquer diplomacy was as decisive as any battlefield victory. By the time the final war against the Achaean League erupted, the Greeks were too fractured, too mistrustful of one another, to mount a true resistance. Life under Roman rule. Once Greece became a Roman province, daily life changed in both subtle and dramatic ways. Taxes were now paid to Roman officials, and local governors answered to distant masters in the Senate. Yet unlike the sack of Corinth or Epirus, most communities did not live in ruins. Instead, they adapted. Roman garrisons were established in key cities, but ordinary Greek citizens still went about their lives. Farmers tended fields, artisans crafted pottery, and merchants traded across the Aegean. In many ways, daily rhythms continued as before, only now under Roman oversight. Greek elites, however, faced a choice: resist or cooperate. Many chose cooperation, serving as intermediaries between Roman governors and the local population. Some were even rewarded with Roman citizenship, gaining prestige and protection. Others, who clung too tightly to independence, found themselves marginalized or punished. Over time, Roman infrastructure reshaped Greece. Roads connected cities more efficiently, trade routes expanded, and Roman law introduced new systems of justice. Though often harsh, these changes also brought stability. Greece, long plagued by endless city-state rivalries, now lived under a single, if foreign, authority. The result was a paradox. While political freedom was gone, a degree of order and prosperity emerged, laying the foundation for Greece to thrive culturally even under Roman domination. The flow of wealth and knowledge. Rome's conquest of Greece was not just about soldiers and politics, it was also about treasure. Greek art, manuscripts, and riches poured into Rome. Statues of gods and heroes were paraded through Roman streets. Libraries were looted, and entire collections of philosophy and science crossed the sea. For Roman elites, owning Greek art became a mark of status. Villas were decorated with marble statues of Athena or Apollo. Greek manuscripts were copied and studied, fueling Rome's hunger for knowledge. In many ways, the Romans saw themselves not only as conquerors, but as heirs to Greek greatness. This flow of culture was not one-sided, but Greek scholars and tutors traveled to Rome, teaching the children of senators and generals. Medicine, astronomy, and philosophy were eagerly absorbed. Without Greece, Rome's cultural achievements would have been far thinner. Yet for Greeks, the sight of their treasures in foreign hands was bittersweet. What had been symbols of civic pride now adorned the homes of their conquerors. Athens, once the intellectual heart of the world, became a quarry of ideas for Rome's rising empire. Still, in this transfer, Greek civilization found a strange kind of immortality. Though their independence was gone, their culture had become the backbone of the Mediterranean world. Rome's transformation through Greece. By conquering Greece, Rome did more than gain land. It transformed itself. Before the wars in the East, Rome had been a republic of farmers and soldiers, disciplined but culturally modest. After Greece, Rome was cosmopolitan, filled with art, philosophy, and luxuries it had once dismissed as foreign. Greek influence reshaped Roman education. Children of the elite studied Homer, learned rhetoric in the Greek style, and debated philosophy as though they were Athenians. Even Latin literature, from Virgil to Ovid, carried Greek echoes. Rome had conquered militarily, but Greece had conquered intellectually. This transformation was not without tension. Some Romans feared that Greek culture would soften Roman virtue, replacing discipline with decadence. Cato the Elder famously warned against Greek philosophy, fearing it would corrupt Roman morals. Yet despite these protests, Greek culture only grew more entrenched. By the 1st century BCE, a Roman senator could not be considered truly educated without a grounding in Greek thought. To speak Greek was to show refinement. To quote Greek authors was to display wisdom. Rome had become something new, a military empire carrying the torch of Greek civilization. Thus, the conquest of Greece was not simply the end of an era, it was the birth of a new cultural world, one that blended Roman power with Greek brilliance. The resistance of Macedon. Although Rome emerged victorious, Macedon did not collapse without a fight. After Philip V's defeat, his son Perseus inherited both the throne and the bitter determination to restore Macedon's glory. He reorganized the army, reasserted influence over neighboring states, and cultivated alliances in Greece and beyond. Perseus sought to present himself, not merely as a king, but as a champion of Hellenic freedom. He appealed to city-states weary of Roman oversight, offering protection and dignity. For a brief moment, it seemed possible that Macedon might rally Greece into one last defense against Roman domination. Yet Roman suspicion was relentless. The Senate exaggerated Perseus' maneuvers as signs of aggression, and soon war was declared once more. This Third Macedonian War brought the climactic Battle of Pydna in 168 BCE, where Rome once again demonstrated the superiority of the legion over the phalanx. At Pydna, Perseus' army initially pressed the Romans hard, but as the battlefield grew uneven, the phalanx broke apart. Roman maniples slipped into the gaps, cutting down Macedonian soldiers in brutal close combat. The once proud formation that had conquered Persia now lay shattered. Macedon was dissolved as a kingdom, its monarchy abolished, and the land divided into smaller republics under Roman supervision. The dream of a Macedonian-led revival of Greece was extinguished, and Rome's grip on the region tightened even further. The myth of Roman liberation? One of Rome's most cunning strategies in Greece was presenting conquest as liberation. Roman generals spoke not as conquerors, but as saviors, claiming they had come to free the Greeks from tyranny and foreign domination. At first, many Greeks welcomed this message. The proclamation of freedom at the Isthmian Games in 196 BCE was a masterstroke. The announcement that the Greeks are free brought tears to the crowd, who hailed Flamininus as a hero. Yet behind the words lay a subtle trap. Rome's definition of freedom meant submission to Roman interests. Over time, the illusion became clear. Roman troops lingered, treaties favored Rome, and political interference grew. Cities that resisted found themselves punished, while those that complied were rewarded with Roman backing. Liberation had become a mask for domination. For many Greeks, the realization was bitter. They had traded one master for another, and the dream of true autonomy had vanished. The word freedom still echoed in speeches and inscriptions, but its meaning had been hollowed out. Rome's genius lay in convincing others that they ruled themselves, even as every decision was shaped by Roman power. This subtle domination, more than any battlefield victory, ensured that Greece would never again stand independent. The sack of Corinth. If there was ever a moment that symbolized the end of Greek independence, it was the sack of Corinth in 146 BCE. The Achaean League, frustrated by Roman interference, rose in defiance. Corinth, proud and wealthy, became the center of resistance. Rome's patience had run out. The Roman general Lucius Mummius marched on the city with overwhelming force. The battle was swift, and the result was catastrophic. Corinth was burned to the ground, its population slaughtered or enslaved, and its treasures carted off to Rome. The destruction of Corinth shocked the Greek world. This was no longer the Rome that pretended to liberate. This was Rome asserting absolute authority. A city that had once rivaled Athens in wealth and prestige was reduced to ashes, a warning to all who dared resist. For Romans, the spoils of Corinth became symbols of victory. Statues, mosaics, and masterpieces were carried to Italy, enriching the cultural life of the conquerors. Yet for Greeks, it was a tragedy beyond measure, a moment when the last illusions of autonomy were burned away. After 146 BCE, Greece was fully integrated into the Roman system. The sack of Corinth was not merely a military victory, it was a psychological one, crushing resistance and announcing that Rome was now the master of the Mediterranean. The role of Greek mercenaries. Even as Greece lost its independence, Greek warriors continued to shape the ancient world, not as sovereign defenders, but as mercenaries. For centuries, Greek hoplites and Macedonian veterans had fought in foreign armies, from Persia to Egypt. Rome, too, employed them. Greek mercenaries were valued for their discipline and experience. Some served as auxiliaries in Roman campaigns, while others fought in distant wars, lending their skills to whoever paid best. In this way, Greek military tradition survived even as the political power of Greece faded. Yet mercenary life was fraught with contradiction. For Greeks, it was often the only path to wealth or adventure. But it also meant fighting under foreign banners, sometimes even against fellow Greeks. This fractured loyalty reflected the broader decline of Greek unity. Roman commanders admired Greek fighters, but never relied on them completely. The legion remained supreme, and Greek mercenaries were always secondary to Rome's citizen soldiers. Still, their presence on battlefields across the empire kept alive the memory of Greece's once great martial tradition. Through mercenaries, Greek influence endured in warfare, even as Rome carried the torch of power into new lands. They were reminders that, though the state had fallen, the skill of the Greek warrior remained respected, if no longer feared. Religion and cultural exchange. The conquest of Greece was not just political or military, it was deeply religious and cultural. Romans, pragmatic in their approach to gods, eagerly absorbed Greek deities into their own pantheon. Zeus became Jupiter, Aphrodite became Venus, Ares became Mars. Temples that once echoed with Greek prayers were rededicated with Roman rituals, yet the essence of worship remained. Festivals, sacrifices, and oracles continued, now under Roman oversight. For ordinary Greeks, religion offered continuity in a time of upheaval. Philosophy, too, found new patrons. Stoicism, Epicureanism, and Platonism spread through Rome, shaping the moral outlook of senators and emperors alike. Greek thinkers such as Polybius even lived in Rome, advising leaders and recording history. This exchange created a cultural fusion. Rome provided the political order, while Greece provided the intellectual and spiritual framework. Together, they forged a new Mediterranean identity that blended discipline with imagination, law with philosophy. In this way, Greek religion and culture did not die with conquest. Instead, they found a second life, woven into the fabric of Roman civilization, ensuring that the legacy of Greece endured even in defeat. The Greek cities under Roman rule. After the sack of Corinth, Greek city-states entered a new phase. Life under Roman administration. While some cities retained a measure of local autonomy, their decisions were always subject to Roman approval. Governors oversaw taxation, justice, and defense, ensuring that no Greek state could rise independently again. Yet daily life in many cities continued much as before. Markets bustled with trade, theaters staged dramas, and temples hosted festivals. For the average citizen, Rome's presence often felt distant, though taxes weighed heavily. As long as cities did not challenge Roman authority, they were permitted to maintain their civic institutions. Athens, in particular, enjoyed special status. Revered as the intellectual jewel of Greece, it became a cultural magnet for Roman elites who traveled there to study philosophy and rhetoric. Senators and generals who once fought against Greek armies now sent their sons to learn from Greek teachers. Still, not all cities prospered equally. Rural communities often bore the brunt of taxation, and the economic imbalance between wealthy urban elites and struggling farmers widened under Roman oversight. Social tensions occasionally flared, but with Rome's legions always near, rebellion was impossible. The Greek city-states, once independent powers on the world stage, became jewels in Rome's imperial crown. Their political freedom was gone, but their cultural and civic traditions remained, now serving a larger empire rather than their own ambitions. Greek art in Roman homes. One of the most profound legacies of conquest was the spread of Greek art into Roman life. Roman generals, flush with victory, returned from campaigns loaded with statues, mosaics, and paintings seized from Greek temples and homes. These treasures soon adorned Roman villas, transforming domestic spaces into galleries. Roman elites prided themselves on displaying Greek art as symbols of education and refinement. A villa decorated with Greek statues signaled not just wealth but sophistication. Owning such works suggested that the family appreciated philosophy, beauty, and the ideals of the Hellenic past. Greek artisans quickly found new patrons among Romans. Sculptors were commissioned to create marble replicas of famous statues, ensuring that masterpieces once confined to Greece now multiplied across Italy. In some cases, these Roman copies are all that survive today of lost Greek originals. The infusion of Greek aesthetics reshaped Roman taste. Where early Rome had favored simplicity and practicality, the new elite class embraced elegance, proportion, and balance. Public buildings, too, began to feature Greek-inspired columns, friezes, and decorative details. Through art, Greece conquered Rome. In return, the physical presence of Greek beauty in Roman homes and cities ensured that even as Greek power declined, its cultural legacy was immortalized in marble and bronze. The Roman appetite for Greek philosophy. Roman conquest also opened the floodgates to Greek philosophy. Stoicism, Epicureanism, and Platonism, once confined to Greek academies, spread rapidly across the Roman elite. For men who ruled vast territories, these schools offered guidance on ethics, governance, and the meaning of life. Stoicism, with its emphasis on self-control and duty, appealed strongly to Roman senators and generals. Figures like Cicero and later Marcus Aurelius drew upon its teachings to navigate the burdens of political life. Epicureanism, focused on the pursuit of tranquility and freedom from fear, found followers among those seeking respite from the chaos of politics. Greek philosophers often relocated to Rome itself, teaching in private houses or public forums. Polybius, a historian from Greece, became a close advisor to Scipio Aemilianus, offering insights into both history and politics. Such relationships highlighted how Greece, though conquered, continued to shape the conqueror's minds. Roman youth were frequently sent to study in Athens, where they absorbed not just philosophy but also rhetoric and logic, essential tools for careers in law and governance. Education became a bridge, turning Greek intellectual tradition into the foundation of Roman statesmanship. In embracing philosophy, Rome did not simply imitate Greece. It adapted and applied Greek wisdom to its own challenges, blending it with Roman practicality. The result was a cultural fusion that would echo through centuries of Western thought. The fate of Sparta. Among all the Greek states, Sparta's decline under Roman rule was especially poignant. Once feared across the Mediterranean for its warriors, Sparta by the 2nd century BCE was a shadow of its former self, its military system crumbling and its political influence gone. When Rome entered the Greek world, Sparta tried to maneuver diplomatically, aligning itself with whichever power seemed strongest. Yet the city's diminished resources meant it could no longer dictate terms. It became increasingly irrelevant in the grand strategies of empires. Under Roman rule, Sparta reinvented itself as a curiosity. Tourists from across the empire traveled to see the land of Leonidas, and the legendary 300 gladiatorial-style contests were staged, often marketed as continuations of Spartan traditions. The city leaned into its mythic past, transforming itself into a living museum. For Romans, Sparta was admired less as a political power and more as a symbol of austere discipline. Philosophers and writers praised its customs, even as the real city languished in obscurity. In this way, Sparta survived not through strength, but through memory and myth. The fate of Sparta revealed the broader truth of Greece under Rome. The cities remained, the culture endured, but the power that once shook empires had become only a story for travelers and scholars to retell. Athens as Rome's schoolhouse. If Sparta became a relic, Athens became the beating heart of Greek influence under Rome. The city's prestige as the home of philosophy, theater, and democracy ensured that it retained a special place in the Roman imagination. Wealthy Roman families sent their sons to Athens to study under Greek tutors, walking the same streets where Plato and Aristotle had once taught. Schools of philosophy continued to thrive, adapting to new audiences while preserving ancient traditions. Roman leaders themselves visited Athens, seeking legitimacy through association with its intellectual heritage. Julius Caesar, Augustus, and later emperors all paid homage to the city, commissioning buildings and patronizing philosophers. This patronage ensured Athens remained vibrant, even as its political independence was gone. The city's theaters hosted performances that blended Greek classics with Roman adaptations. Its temples, though overshadowed by Roman structures, continued to draw pilgrims and scholars alike. Athens was no longer the master of Greece, but it became the master of minds. By embracing its role as Rome's teacher, Athens secured a unique survival while its armies no longer marched and its empire was long gone. Its ideas flowed through the veins of Roman society, ensuring its immortality far beyond its borders. Roman admiration and fear of Greek oratory. In the Roman Republic, politics was fought not only on battlefields but also in speeches. Greek mastery of rhetoric fascinated Roman elites, who saw persuasive speech as a weapon as sharp as any sword. From Athens came teachers who schooled young Romans in argument, debate, and performance. Cicero, one of Rome's greatest orators, openly credited his Greek education for shaping his eloquence. He studied in Athens and Rhodes, perfecting the art of using rhythm, tone, and structure to sway an audience. For Cicero, and for many Romans, Greek oratory was the gold standard of persuasion. Yet Greek influence was not embraced without suspicion. Some Romans feared that the polished speech of Greek teachers softened traditional Roman virtues of bluntness and honesty. Rhetoric, they argued, could manipulate the public, undermining moral discipline. This tension reflected Rome's deeper ambivalence about Greek culture. Despite criticism, Greek rhetoric thrived in Rome. Political trials, Senate debates, and even funeral speeches bore the marks of Greek training. The ability to win hearts and minds with words became just as important as commanding troops in the field. The legacy of Greek oratory in Rome endured long after Greece itself had lost its freedom. By mastering the spoken word, Roman leaders carried Greek traditions into the very heart of their own republic. The transformation of Greek religion under Rome. Religion in Greece did not vanish under Roman control. Instead, it evolved. The gods of Olympus were absorbed into the Roman pantheon, often renamed but still recognizable. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, and Dionysus blended with Bacchus. This fusion was not forced but natural, as both cultures shared similar views of divine hierarchy and ritual. Roman priests incorporated Greek myths into their traditions, while Greek temples continued to function under Roman protection. Festivals once held in honor of Athena or Apollo continued, now often with Roman sponsorship. One fascinating development was the spread of mystery religions. Cults of Dionysus, Demeter, and later Isis and Mithras gained traction in both Greece and Rome. These religions offered personal salvation and a sense of belonging, filling spiritual needs that traditional civic worship no longer met. Greek oracles, particularly Delphi, retained influence. Roman generals consulted them before campaigns, intertwining Greek prophecy with Roman ambition. Even emperors sought legitimacy by associating themselves with Greek sacred sites. Thus, religion became a bridge between conqueror and conquered. The Romans, while masters of Greek politics, positioned themselves as partners in the realm of the divine, ensuring continuity even amid upheaval. The economic integration of Greece into Rome. Rome's conquest of Greece was not only about power and culture, it was also about wealth. Greece, with its fertile lands, trade networks, and skilled artisans, became a vital part of Rome's economic engine. Roman governors imposed taxes on Greek cities, often redirecting wealth straight to Rome. Agricultural products like olive oil, wine, and grain were shipped across the Mediterranean, feeding the growing urban population of Italy. Greek ports buzzed with new activity, now serving Roman rather than Greek interests. Wealthy Roman landowners began acquiring estates in Greece, transforming traditional farms into vast latifundia, worked by slaves. This shift disrupted local economies, concentrating wealth in the hands of a few while leaving small farmers increasingly vulnerable. At the same time, Greek craftsmanship found new markets. Pottery, jewelry, and textiles flowed to Rome, while Greek architects and engineers found steady employment in imperial projects. Though politically subdued, Greece remained a hub of production and trade. Economically, Greece was both exploited and enriched. Its resources fueled Rome's empire, but the flow of wealth also revitalized its cities, ensuring that even under foreign rule, Greece retained importance in the Mediterranean world. Greek influence on Roman education. Perhaps the most enduring Greek contribution to Rome was education. In the early Republic, Roman children learned practical skills, farming, law, and military discipline. But after Greece's conquest, education expanded into philosophy, literature, and science, modeled after Greek traditions. Wealthy Roman families hired Greek tutors, many of them enslaved intellectuals captured in war. These tutors introduced Roman youth to Homer, Plato, and Aristotle, instilling values of logic and inquiry. To be educated in Rome increasingly meant to be educated in Greek thought. This influence reshaped Roman ideals. A statesman was no longer just a soldier or landowner. He was expected to be eloquent, well-read, and philosophically grounded. Public life demanded a blend of Greek wisdom and Roman practicality. Even scientific studies were filtered through Greek lenses. Medicine, astronomy, and mathematics were taught using Greek texts, ensuring that the intellectual achievements of Greece became the backbone of Roman learning. Through education, Greece conquered Rome in spirit. While the legions had subdued the land, Greek teachers shaped the minds of Rome's leaders, creating a legacy that would outlast empires. The symbolism of Greece in Roman imagination. For Romans, Greece was more than just a province. It was a symbol. To walk the streets of Athens or visit the ruins of Sparta was to encounter living history, reminders of past glories that Rome now claimed as its inheritance. Roman writers and poets frequently referenced Greek myths, heroes, and battles. Virgil's Aeneid positioned Rome as the heir of Troy, tying Roman destiny to Greek legend. By framing their empire as the continuation of Greek greatness, Romans legitimized their power as both conquerors and cultural successors. Monuments in Rome reflected this symbolism. Temples modeled on Greek architecture, statues of Greek gods, and inscriptions quoting Greek wisdom all served to remind Romans that they had absorbed and surpassed the legacy of health. At the same time, Greek culture became a mirror for Roman anxieties. Admiration was tinged with fear. Too much luxury, too much philosophy, too much Greek softness could weaken Roman discipline. Writers like Cato, the Elder, warned against losing Roman virtues to Greek influence. Yet no matter the warnings, Greek culture remained irresistible. Rome's imagination was forever bound to Greece, its achievements woven into the very story of Roman identity. Rome's military lessons from Greece. Although Rome defeated Greece, the legions also learned valuable military lessons from their campaigns. The Macedonian phalanx, with its long sarissas and tightly packed ranks, had once dominated the battlefield, while Rome's flexible manipular system ultimately triumphed. Roman generals never dismissed the discipline and coordination the phalanx represented. Roman commanders observed how Greek armies drilled, maneuvered, and relied on professional soldiers rather than citizen levies. These observations influenced Rome's own transition toward a more professional standing army, especially under leaders like Marius in the late Republic. Naval warfare also carried Greek lessons. Rome had long relied on sheer numbers and brute tactics at sea, but exposure to Greek and Hellenistic naval strategies refined their approach. Greek triremes and naval traditions shaped the fleets that would later dominate the Mediterranean. Beyond tactics, Rome absorbed Greek ideas of war as theater. Victories were not just about winning battles, but also about demonstrating cultural superiority. The triumphal parades in Rome often echoed the Greek tradition of celebrating military success with festivals and rituals. In this way, Greece became a silent teacher, its defeats providing Rome with the knowledge to expand and sustain empire on an even greater scale. Greek medicine and Roman health. The Romans had always been practical about health, relying on remedies, rituals, and military hygiene. But Greek medicine introduced a systematic approach. Physicians trained in the Hippocratic tradition began to practice in Rome, offering theories about the four humors and balancing the body. One of the most influential figures was Galen, a Greek physician whose writings dominated medical thought for centuries. Though he lived during the Roman Empire, his theories were entirely rooted in Greek inquiry, blending anatomy, philosophy, and observation. His work became the standard reference in Rome's hospitals, military camps, and even gladiatorial schools. Roman elites eagerly sought Greek doctors, sometimes granting them citizenship as a reward for service. Public baths, aqueducts, and sanitation measures also reflected Greek ideas of balance and wellness, though Rome expanded them on a massive scale. Despite this admiration, Greek doctors in Rome were not always trusted. Satirists mocked them as dangerous quacks who experimented recklessly on patients. Yet even critics admitted that Greek medicine had brought Rome a deeper understanding of health and disease. Through medicine, Greece gave Rome not only practical tools for survival, but also a scientific framework that persisted long after both civilizations had passed into history. Greek slaves as Rome's cultural ambassadors. One of the less glamorous but deeply influential aspects of Roman conquest was slavery. Thousands of Greeks were captured and brought to Rome, where many became tutors, secretaries, or philosophers in the households of the elite. These enslaved Greeks carried with them their culture, language, and knowledge. A Roman child might learn Homer from a Greek slave, debate philosophy with him, or even rely on him for advice in adulthood. While enslaved in status, these individuals often held extraordinary influence over Rome's next generation of leaders. Some Greek slaves achieved fame in their own right. Epictetus, for example, was born into slavery but became one of the most respected Stoic philosophers. His teachings spread widely, shaping Roman thought for centuries. The presence of Greek slaves blurred the lines between conqueror and conquered. Romans owned their bodies, but their minds and ideas flowed freely into Roman society, subtly reshaping its values. Ironically, the conquest that enslaved so many Greeks also ensured that Greek culture became inseparable from Roman identity. The teachers, scribes, and thinkers in chains left a cultural legacy far greater than their masters could have imagined. Greek cities under Roman rule. For the cities of Greece, Roman conquest brought both continuity and change. Athens remained a center of learning, drawing Roman elites eager to study philosophy and the birthplace of Socrates and Plato. Its schools flourished, even under Roman governors. Sparta, though long past its military glory, became something of a tourist attraction. Romans, fascinated by tales of Spartan discipline and austerity, visited the city, treating it as a living museum of old values. Ceremonies and rituals were preserved, sometimes more for spectacle than substance. Corinth, destroyed by Rome in 146 BCE, was later rebuilt by Julius Caesar as a Roman colony. It quickly rose to prominence again, becoming one of the wealthiest and most cosmopolitan cities of the empire. Its position on major trade routes made it a hub for merchants, artisans, and intellectuals alike. Other cities, such as Delphi and Olympia, retained importance through their sanctuaries and festivals. Roman officials invested in maintaining these sites, understanding that Greek religious prestige could enhance Roman legitimacy. In many ways, Greek cities under Rome retained their character while adjusting to new realities. They became hybrid spaces where Greek tradition and Roman authority intertwined. Greek art, as a Roman obsession, Roman conquest of Greece turned art collecting into a frenzy. Victorious generals looted temples, theaters, and palaces, shipping statues and paintings back to Rome. For the first time, Rome was filled with the masterpieces of Phidias, Praxiteles, and countless unknown artisans. This influx of Greek art transformed Roman tastes. Where once Roman sculpture had been simple and functional, now it aspired to Greek ideals of beauty, harmony, and realism. Wealthy families decorated their villas with Greek statues, while public buildings displayed plundered treasures as symbols of power. Some Romans even commissioned Greek artists to produce new works in the old style. Copying became an art in itself, with Roman versions of Greek originals spreading across the empire. Without these copies, much of Greek artistic heritage might have been lost. Yet art also became a point of debate. Conservatives like Cato the Elder worried that luxury and indulgence in beauty would erode Roman toughness, but others argued that embracing Greek art elevated Rome, proving it had not only conquered Greece but inherited its greatness. In the end, Greek art did more than decorate Rome. It reshaped its identity, leaving behind a visual language that would echo throughout Western civilization. The Roman elite and their Greek tutors. For wealthy Roman families, hiring a Greek tutor became almost a status symbol. Fathers who once taught their sons through military discipline now entrusted their children to Greek intellectuals. These tutors instructed not only in language and literature but also in philosophy, mathematics, and even rhetoric, which would later prove invaluable for political careers. Roman senators and generals often boasted of their Greek education. Cicero, for instance, spent time in Athens and Rhodes to perfect his oratory skills, blending Roman practicality with Greek elegance. His speeches still carried traces of the rhetorical training that originated in the agora. At the same time, tensions simmered. Romans prided themselves on being men of action, while Greeks were stereotyped as dreamers or sophists. Critics like Cato complained that Greek learning made Romans soft. Yet, even these critics often employed Greek tutors in secret, unwilling to deprive their families of the advantages such an education provided. This educational shift ensured that Rome's elite were bilingual and bicultural. A Roman politician could address the Senate in Latin, then quote Homer or Plato to add weight to his words. Knowledge of Greece became not just an asset but a requirement for rising to prominence. Over time, this reliance on Greek tutors blurred the cultural divide. Rome ruled politically, but in the intellectual household, the Greeks remained masters. Greek theater and Roman spectacle. The Roman appetite for entertainment was enormous, and Greek theater played a vital role in shaping it. Greek tragedies and comedies were translated into Latin, adapted for Roman audiences, and performed in massive stone theaters across the empire. Playwrights like Plautus and Terence borrowed heavily from Greek originals, often reworking Athenian comedies to suit Roman tastes. Roman humor tended to be broader, with slapstick and satire replacing the subtler wit of the Greeks. Still, the influence of Menander and Aristophanes was unmistakable. Theater also served as more than amusement. It was a tool of politics. Generals funded lavish productions to curry favor with the people, echoing the Greek tradition of civic patronage. A successful play could enhance a politician's popularity almost as much as a military victory. Yet Rome adapted theater into its own spectacle-driven culture. While Greek plays focused on moral lessons or philosophical dilemmas, Roman performances often emphasized spectacle, music, and elaborate stagecraft. The shift foreshadowed the grandeur of gladiatorial shows and chariot races. Greek theater gave Rome the template, but Roman ambition transformed it into something louder, larger, and uniquely Roman. Greek influence on Roman religion. Though Rome had its own pantheon, Greek gods gradually slipped into Roman life, often disguised under Latin names. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Ares became Mars, and so forth. What began as cultural borrowing evolved into near-complete fusion. Roman temples began to resemble Greek ones in design, with columns, pediments, and statues modeled after Hellenic prototypes. Religious festivals borrowed Greek rituals, music, and theatrical displays, blending them seamlessly with Roman traditions. Philosophy also influenced Roman spirituality. Stoicism, Epicureanism, and later Neoplatonism offered frameworks that resonated with Roman elites. These philosophies provided a moral and intellectual foundation that complemented, and sometimes challenged, traditional Roman religious practices. The mystery cults of Greece also gained popularity. The Eleusinian mysteries, dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, found Roman adherents fascinated by their promises of life after death. These cults offered personal salvation in contrast to Rome's more civic-based religious system. By adopting Greek gods and rituals, Rome created a syncretic religion that was both familiar and foreign, a spiritual reflection of the empire's broader cultural fusion. Greek influence on Roman philosophy and law. Greek philosophy deeply shaped Roman intellectual life, particularly in the realm of law and governance. The Stoic belief in universal reason and natural law resonated with Roman jurists, who began to frame legal codes not just as civic duties but as reflections of universal justice. Cicero, influenced by both Stoicism and the Academy, argued that true law was rooted in nature and reason, not simply the decrees of rulers. This philosophical underpinning gave Roman law a durability that helped it outlast the empire itself. Greek skepticism and Epicureanism also found adherents in Rome. While Stoicism became popular among statesmen and generals, Epicureanism attracted those seeking tranquility in a chaotic world. The poet Lucretius famously captured these ideas in De Rerum Natura, spreading Greek thought through Latin verse. Philosophy was not confined to ivory towers. It became part of Roman politics. Senators debated with Stoic logic, emperors adopted philosophical personas, and ordinary citizens heard Greek ideas reframed in Latin, in public forums. Through law and philosophy, Greece gave Rome an intellectual backbone, transforming practical governance into something more profound, a vision of universal order. The Roman identity crisis. As Rome absorbed Greek culture, a question emerged. What did it mean to be Roman? Was Roman strength defined by military conquest, or by cultural refinement borrowed from Greece? Conservative voices like Cato the Elder warned that luxury and philosophy would corrupt Roman virtues of discipline and simplicity. He famously declared that Greece would ruin Rome with its charm. Yet his own reliance on Greek tutors revealed the contradiction. Others, however, embraced the fusion. To them, Roman power was validated by absorbing Greece, proving that Rome could conquer not only land but also culture. For this group, Roman identity was not weakened by Greece, it was elevated. The tension shaped centuries of debate. Roman poets lamented moral decline, even as they wrote in Greek-inspired meters. Emperors sponsored Greek festivals in Rome while preaching the old Roman virtues. In the end, Rome's identity became a hybrid. It was never purely Roman, nor purely Greek, but something new, a civilization that could wield a sword with one hand while holding a scroll with the other. Greek literature's journey to Rome. Greek literature became a cornerstone of Roman education and culture. Epic poems, histories, and plays were translated into Latin, exposing Roman audiences to the grandeur of Homer, Hesiod, and Herodotus. These works offered more than entertainment. They provided moral lessons, historical perspectives, and reflections on human nature. Roman poets like Virgil drew directly on Greek epics. The Aeneid mirrored Homeric structures while inserting Roman themes of duty, destiny, and empire. Roman writers were not simply copying, they were reinterpreting Greek stories to serve Roman ideals, blending admiration with innovation. Historians such as Livy and Polybius used Greek methods of chronicling, balancing narrative drama with factual inquiry. The Greek emphasis on causation, moral lessons, and civic virtue informed how Romans recorded their own history. Even Greek drama influenced Roman theater and public performance. Comedies of Aristophanes were adapted with Latin dialogue, retaining humor while reflecting Roman social norms. Tragedies inspired Romans to explore themes of fate, honor, and hubris, reinforcing civic morality. Through literature, Greece's intellectual and artistic legacy became inseparable from Roman identity. The conquered lands had transformed into a cultural mentor, teaching Rome how to write, reflect, and immortalize history. Greek science and innovation in Rome. Science and technology were areas where Greek influence profoundly shaped Roman society. Greek scholars had already laid foundations in mathematics, astronomy, and engineering, which Rome eagerly adopted and expanded. Archimedean principles informed Roman siege engines and aqueduct construction, allowing engineers to build durable infrastructure across the empire. Greek knowledge of geometry and mechanics became essential for roads, bridges, and monumental buildings. Medical practices derived from Hippocrates and Galen influenced Roman hospitals and military medicine. Greek theories of anatomy and hygiene guided treatments in urban centers and the battlefield alike, ensuring that Roman soldiers survived and thrived in distant campaigns. Astronomy and geography also traveled to Rome. Greek maps, star charts, and navigational techniques were integrated into Roman knowledge, aiding trade, military logistics, and the administration of vast territories. Rome's practical application of Greek science demonstrated a new philosophy: conquer and utilize. Greece had created knowledge. Rome ensured it reached its full potential through implementation, systematization, and adaptation. The role of Greek religion in Roman daily life. Greek religion did not merely survive, it thrived under Roman adaptation. Temples, festivals, and rituals continued, often sponsored by Roman authorities eager to legitimize their rule. Gods were renamed, myths translated, but the essence of Hellenic spirituality persisted. Festivals like the Panathenæa inspired Roman equivalents, blending entertainment with ritual. Sacred sites such as Delphi retained influence, as Romans consulted oracles and offered tributes to seek divine favor in military and political ventures. Mystery religions offered private salvation to those seeking personal meaning. Cults of Demeter, Dionysus, and later Isis captivated Romans, particularly in urban centers where traditional civic religion was less central to daily life. These cults spread Greek ideas of immortality and moral responsibility far beyond Greece. Even public officials and emperors incorporated Greek deities and rituals into their agendas. Sponsoring temple construction or participating in Greek ceremonies became a statement of cultural literacy and divine favor. In daily life, the Greek gods and their festivals became a familiar presence, guiding everything from harvests to courtship, ensuring that Greek spirituality remained a living, breathing part of the Roman world. Greek architecture's transformation of Rome. Greek architecture reshaped the Roman skyline. Temples, theaters, and public buildings borrowed the elegance of Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns, blending Greek aesthetics with Roman engineering genius. The Romans expanded Greek designs to unprecedented scales. Temples became monumental, theaters seated thousands, and aqueducts stretched for miles, all while preserving the beauty and proportion of Greek prototypes. Public spaces, like forums and baths, incorporated Greek principles of symmetry and harmony. Even private villas displayed statues, colonnades, and mosaics inspired by Greek models. Wealthy Romans competed to outdo one another in recreating the Greek ideal within their own homes. Roman architects adapted Greek styles to their own needs, creating hybrid forms that combined utility with beauty. The Pantheon, while uniquely Roman in dome construction, incorporated Corinthian columns and pediments, a testament to Greek influence. Through architecture, Greece left an enduring imprint on Roman cities. The empire became a living gallery of Hellenic design, blending power, utility, and art in every stone. The legacy of Greek conquest in Rome. By the end of the Conquest era, Greece had lost political independence but achieved something far greater: cultural immortality. Roman education, philosophy, art, religion, and governance were infused with Greek influence, ensuring that the spirit of Hellas endured. Rome absorbed Greek achievements, but also adapted them, creating a new civilization that merged conquest with intellectual and artistic inheritance. Military victories had subdued Greece, but Greek culture subtly commanded the empire's elite, shaping minds and institutions. Even centuries later, Roman identity remained intertwined with Greece. The empire's literature, architecture, and philosophy owed much to Greek genius, proving that cultural conquest could be more enduring than territorial control. Greek victories in life may have been lost, but in Rome's imagination, libraries, temples, theaters, and schools immortalized them. The conquered became teachers, advisors, and inspiration for centuries to come. Rome had conquered Greece, but in the process, Greece conquered the soul of Rome, Greek education, and Roman citizenship. As Rome expanded, Greek education became a critical tool for shaping future citizens. Roman boys in elite families learned Greek language, literature, and philosophy alongside Latin grammar and Roman history. This dual education created a generation of leaders who could navigate both Roman civic life and the intellectual traditions of Greece. Public schools often employed Greek teachers to instruct in grammar, rhetoric, and logic. The goal was not merely knowledge but cultivation of judgment and eloquence. A well-educated citizen could participate effectively in public debate, understand law, and influence policy, all skills shaped by Greek pedagogy. The integration of Greek learning into Roman curricula also reflected social mobility. Freedmen and wealthy non-Romans could gain status through education, demonstrating the power of Greek knowledge as a tool for advancement. Literacy in Greek often meant access to political, cultural, and economic opportunities that were otherwise closed. Greek philosophy further shaped Roman civic ideals. Stoicism, for instance, taught discipline, duty, and ethical reasoning, qualities prized in senators and magistrates. The ethical frameworks borrowed from Greece helped form the backbone of Roman notions of justice and moral responsibility. Through education, Greek culture became a core component of Roman citizenship. To be Roman increasingly meant to be conversant in Greek thought, a paradox that allowed the conquered to define the ruler's identity. Greek theater and Roman entertainment evolution. Greek theater provided more than literary influence. It redefined public entertainment in Rome. Tragedy and comedy were adapted for Roman tastes, influencing both public festivals and private performances in elite households. Roman comedies, while borrowing Greek plots, emphasized spectacle and humor that appealed to broader audiences. Tragedies retained moral and philosophical lessons, but Romans often preferred grand gestures and dramatic displays over subtle nuance. Gladiatorial games, chariot races, and mock naval battles incorporated Greek ideas of theatricality. Romans learned from Greek performances the power of emotion, narrative, and public engagement. A Roman crowd could experience not just action but morality, heroism, and drama. Greek theater had taught them how. Roman playwrights like Plautus and Terence became intermediaries, translating Greek wisdom into Roman contexts. The adaptation of Greek plays became a statement. Rome could conquer not only armies, but culture, transforming Greek art into Roman spectacle. In essence, Greek theater shaped how Romans understood drama, civic engagement, and the pleasures of public performance, laying the foundation for centuries of European theater. Greek philosophy and Roman politics. Greek philosophy influenced the minds of statesmen and emperors alike. Stoicism, with its emphasis on rational control and ethical conduct, became particularly attractive to leaders navigating the complexities of Roman governance. Senators studied Greek works not just for intellectual enrichment, but for practical guidance. Concepts like natural law, civic duty, and the common good informed debates in the Senate and decisions in military campaigns. Philosophy became a tool for leadership as much as education. Even emperors, including Marcus Aurelius, used Greek Stoic principles to shape their rule. Personal reflection, ethical reasoning, and disciplined self-control were seen as essential qualities for anyone entrusted with power over millions. Greek philosophy also offered moral critique. Satirists and thinkers warned that Rome's reliance on conquest and luxury could erode virtue. Using Greek ideas to temper Roman ambition, philosophy became a mirror, reflecting both potential greatness and possible moral decline. In Rome, Greek thought was not passive. It was applied, tested, and lived, shaping laws, policy, and leadership for centuries. Greek artisans and Roman innovation. Greek artisans and craftspeople played a critical role in Rome's urban transformation. Skilled sculptors, painters, and architects were brought to Rome, either as captives or hired professionals, to work on public projects and private estates. Greek techniques influenced Roman sculpture, mosaics, and frescoes. The Roman elite commissioned copies of Greek statues, while workshops produced originals inspired by Hellenistic styles. This influx of talent elevated the aesthetic quality of Roman cities, blending Greek artistry with Roman practicality. Engineering and construction also benefited from Greek influence. Greek expertise in mechanics, surveying, and hydraulics informed aqueducts, bridges, and roads, allowing Rome to build infrastructure on an unprecedented scale. Greek artisanship extended beyond luxury. Everyday objects like pottery, coins, and jewelry bore Hellenistic designs, making Greek culture visible in the daily lives of ordinary Romans. Even domestic interiors reflected a fusion of Greek elegance and Roman function. Ultimately, Greek artisans became cultural conduits, shaping the Roman urban landscape while ensuring that Hellenistic aesthetics and technical skills endured in the empire. The cultural synthesis of Rome and Greece. By the late Republic and early Empire, Rome had achieved a remarkable cultural synthesis. Military conquests subdued Greece, yet Greek thought, art, and religion permeated Roman life, creating a civilization that was both Roman and Greek. This synthesis was visible everywhere. In the Senate, where Greek-trained orators debated, in the streets, where Greek-inspired architecture adorned forums, and in homes, where mosaics and statues celebrated Greek myths. Rome was a living museum of Greek culture. The fusion was also political. Emperors used Greek religion, festivals, and philosophy to legitimize their authority. By adopting and adapting Greek traditions, Rome reinforced both its cultural prestige and imperial ideology. Roman education, literature, religion, and urban planning bore the marks of Greek influence. Even as Rome expanded further, these elements became defining characteristics of Roman identity, demonstrating that conquest could be transformative, not merely destructive. In the end, the story of Rome and Greece is a tale of conquest and continuity, where the sword subdued the land, but ideas, art, and philosophy conquered the soul. Greece's legacy became Rome's inheritance, a triumph that history could neither erase nor diminish. As we step back from the centuries of conquest, culture, and civilization, one thing becomes clear. Rome may have conquered Greece with armies and strategy, but Greece conquered Rome with its ideas, art, and spirit. The streets of Rome echoed with Hellenic columns. The voices of philosophers shaped laws, and Greek myths lived again in Latin poetry and theaters. The story of Rome and Greece reminds us that history is never just about battles and borders. It is about the transfer of knowledge, the blending of cultures, and the enduring power of ideas. A sword may seize land, but a story, a philosophy, or a work of art can shape generations long after the armies are gone. Their legacy survives, intertwined with Rome, a testament to the enduring dialogue between conqueror and conquered. If you enjoyed this journey through time and culture, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest civilizations. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that uncovers the mysteries, legends, and realities of our past. And for those who want to go even deeper, check out our other videos on ancient empires, legendary battles, and the fascinating cultures that shape the world we live in today. Every empire has a story, but some stories like Rome and Greece echo for eternity. History is alive, and with every story we explore, it becomes a little more vivid, a little more unforgettable.